My discussion is about the role of assessment in teaching. What is the role of assessment in teaching? Assessing student learning is something that every teacher has to do, usually quite frequently. What are the ways in which teachers measure student learning? Here are the ways by which teachers can assess the learning of the students. It could be a written test or a book reports. We can let them do research papers, do homeworks and exercises, oral presentations, questions and answer session, science project and science subject, artwork for various sorts are just some of the ways in which teachers measure student learning. With written tests accounting for about 45% of a typical student's course grade. It is no surprise then a typical teacher can spend 1/3 and 1/2 of her class time engaged in one or another type of measurement activity. Yet, despite the amount of time teachers spend assessing student learning, it is a task that most of the teachers dislike and that only few do well. Why? One reason is that many teachers have little or no in-depth knowledge of assessment principles. Another reason is that the role of assessor is seen as being inconsistent with that of the role of the teacher or helper, since teachers with more training in assessment use more appropriate assessment practices than do teachers with less training. Measurement, assessment, evaluation, and outcome-based education. What is assessment? Assessment refers to the collection of data to describe or better understand an issue. This measures where we are in relation to where we should be. Many consider it the same as formative evaluation. Assessment is the collection of information about students' learning. This is about gathering of evidences of what students know and can do. Irissian and Russell define assessment as a process of collecting, synthesizing, and interpreting information in order to make better decisions. It involves a related series of measures used to determine a complex attribute of an individual or group of individuals. Popham defined assessment as a formal attempt to determine student status with respect to educational variables of interest. It is a process by which information is obtained relative to some known objective or goal. Teachers' way of gathering information about what students have learned, and they use them to make important decisions about students' grades, the content of future lessons, the revision of the structure or content of a course. What is measurement? Measurement is the process by which the attributes or dimensions of some physical objects are determined. It is a process of measuring the individual's intelligence, personality, attitudes, and values, achievement, and anything that can be expressed quantitatively. It answers the question, how much? It is the assignment of numbers or other symbols to certain characteristics of the object of interest according to some specified rules in order to reflect qualities of properties. In the classroom, measurement defined as a process of quantifying or assigning a number to a performance or attribute of an individual based on a specific role. and is used to determine how much of a trait, attitude, or characteristic an individual possesses. How about educational measurement? Talking about educational measurement, it is the process of determining a quantitative or qualitative attributes of an individual or group of individuals that is of academic relevance. What can be used to observe quantitative or qualitative attribute of an individual or group of individuals that is of academic relevance? One is tests. A test serves as an instrument to observe this attribute, while test scores, this is the result of the tests. This is what was observed from the tests. It could either be quantitative or qualitative in nature. Tests differ on the type of score interpretation experts use. Bragas 2007 identified this type of interpretation as 1. Content reference, 2nd. Group reference, and the 3rd is criterion reference. Talking about content reference interpretation, this is made when the performance level of a student is compared with reference to an explicit content area. The achievement level is interpreted in terms of specific skills. Scores here are provided, informing what kinds of behavior the students possess in relation with those scores. Group preference interpretation is done when a student's score is compared with the scores of other students in a specific group. So we have norm reference interpretation. This falls under this category. This involves comparing one's scores with the scores of other students. While criterion reference interpretation is observed when a student's score is compared with a cut-off score that represents a performance standard, and students who exceeds the criterion score is acceptable, passing, or admitted, while a student who score below the criterion score is unacceptable, failed, or rejected. No attempt is made to compare the performance of the students with one another. So this is on criterion reference interpretation. Evaluation. Evaluation determines how well did we do what we set out to do. So evaluation is tied to stated goals and objectives. Many equate this to summative evaluation. It refers to the process of determining the extent to which instructional objectives are attained. This also refers to the comparison of data to standard for purpose of judging worth or quality. Talking again about tests, this is an instrument designed to measure any quality, ability, skill, or knowledge, while testing is a method used to measure the level of performance or achievement of the learner. So this means that test is the instrument. Example, a test paper. While testing is a method. How the test is being administered to the test takers. Testing is the administration, the scoring, the interpretation of an instrument designed to elicit information about performance, a sample of a particular area of behavior. This matrix shows the differences of assessment and evaluation. So this is the comparison on what assessment and evaluation is. Based on content, timing, or the primary purpose, In assessment, it is formative. So that is, the test is given in the ongoing process in order to improve the learning. While evaluation, the test is called summative. So this is now the long tests, chapter tests, or perhaps the mastery tests, or the prelim examination, midterm examination, or final examination. So this is in order to gauge the quality. So this based on orientation or based on the focus. So in assessment, it is process-oriented. So this is about how learning is going. While in evaluation, it is product-oriented. What has been learned by the learners. For findings, under findings category or uses thereof, the uses. So assessment, it is diagnostic. So this identify areas for improvement. While evaluation, it is already judgmental. So this will arrive at an overall grade or score of the student. Modes of assessment. A. Traditional assessment. This is preparation of the instrument is time-consuming and prone to cheating. This is objective. That is paper and pen tests, which usually assess low-level thinking skills. Scoring is objective and administration is AC because students can take the test at the same time. Letter B, performance assessment. The learner performs a behavior to be measured in the real-world context. The learner demonstrates the desired behavior in a real-life context, and the focus of control is with the students. This is a mode of assessment that requires actual demonstration of skills or creation of products of learning. The scoring tends to be subjective without rubrics, so we need to have a rubrics in scoring so that there is no bias. Then preparation of the instrument is relatively easy and it measures behavior that cannot be deceived. Letter C is portfolio assessment. This is a process of gathering multiple indicators of student progress to support course goals in dynamic, ongoing, and collaborative processes. Development is time-consuming, and rating tends to be subjective without rubrics. So this is important to have rubrics in all our subjective assessment. Measure students' growth and development. So functions of the following types of assessment process: placement assessment, diagnostic assessment, formative, and summative assessment. In placement assessment, this will determine the entry behavior of the student. Determine the student performance at the beginning of the instruction, what the student already knows. Determine the position of the student in the instructional sequence. Determine the mode of evaluation beneficial for its students. Letter B is diagnostic assessment. So this is given at the start. to determine the students' levels of competence, to identify those who have already achieved mastery of the requisite learning, and to help classify students into tentative small group of instruction. Letter C is formative assessment. This is given to monitor learning progress of the student, and this will provide feedback to both parents and students. So this is now the grading. So it answers the questions where we are in relation to where we should be. And this type of assessment can be done informally and need not use traditional instruments such as quizzes and tests. Letter D is summative assessment. This is given at the end of a unit. The purpose is to determine if the objectives were achieved. This tends to be formal and use traditional instruments such as tests and quizzes. So if we answer the question, how well did we do what we set out to do? So determine the extent of the student achievement and competence, and this will provide a basis for assigning grades. Provide the data from which reports to parents and transcripts can be prepared. Those are all. Thank you.